Alright guys, HyDra again today. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Huge reaction overnight to the fact that OpTic Textures will be starting in the losers bracket for the first time in well over 2 years. Pred apologising publicly for his performance against the Boston Breach, but also Kenny revealing a lot in terms of what's been happening behind the scenes at OpTic for the last couple of weeks, saying that whatever they've talked about in these team talks seemingly is not working when they get into real games. Also rumours emerging that they've simply not been as good in practice as they were earlier in the season. Hex understandably not happy about the whole situation. Very much interested your thoughts on what OpTic do next from here. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, one more series we didn't get to cover last night. That was Vegas versus the Minnesota Rocker. Vegas I thought were probably the better team going into this. Turns out that is the case. They won the game 1. They won the game 2. Game 3 looks like Rocker were going to win it. Invasion control. They went up 2-0. Then they full collapsed, right? So of course, look, accuracy, he stepped away for family reasons, which, were obviously going to affect him to some extent. He decided to make the decision to come back in. Now his mother's out of hospital. We talked about that a few days ago, and that of course is good news. But with accuracy stepping back in, there were questions, right? Because Spart stepped in, and well, I think Spart did a solid job. Certainly in the search and destroys, he was pretty damn good. Yes, that Minnesota team with Spart did get absolutely clapped on a couple of occasions, right? Like there were a few hard points where they got embarrassed entirely. So I understand it that when accuracy said like I want to come back and help the team get to the World Championship, that's what they decided to do. But they just got slapped around here by the Vegas Legion, so massive for Vegas in terms of their championship aspirations. I'm still not really sure, are Vegas actually good or are they not good? Like, I don't really know. And as I said when I talked about this series, that this may have been played, there wasn't really talk about it, but it may have been on a Virginia server just because of the where the two teams are located. So I don't really know if there's much in that. But look, Legion are flip-flopping all the time between looking really deadly and looking pretty terrible. But that's okay if you're still getting the 10 points on the board, because they'll be starting in the winners bracket. Minnesota Rocker will be starting in the losers bracket at the major. Lin's had a rough one here as well, and look, and Standy, I mean, look, the numbers aren't great across the board here, let's be real. And we said this when this team was formed, like when Linz and Standy were an SMU duo, I was like, it doesn't make any sense. How is this going to work? Accuracy and Gunless as an AR duo doesn't make any sense. How is this going to work? And it's proven to be true, I think, over time. They've not made the World Championship yet, but they probably won't. And I just think, again, the decisions made by the top guys of this organization, absolutely shambolic. We've got to talk about some big news, though, on Mohak. So you guys may know this player, been around many a year, of course, won back-to-back Challengers World Championships, had offers, or at least an offer to come into the league, decided not to take it at the time. But apparently, as Zealot says here, he's actually at a homeless shelter now. So it's kind of unclear to see exactly, what's happened here, whether he's been, kicked out by his parents or, like, it's a really sad stuff, right? Now, there is something to say on it, because as Exposed says, I had this kid blocked because he was super toxic, but look, find this guy, tell him to contact me, I'll supply him with housing, I'll buy him his groceries, like everyone deserves a chance to get it right. So hopefully that's going to happen. I know that aBeZy, who tends to know a few things and speaks to people behind the scenes a lot, of course, former pro in his own right, replied to this and said he's actually fine, DM me. So, it's maybe like he's not in a really tricky spot, but he possibly is, going through something for several months now. So yeah, it's good to see the COD community kind of coming together, talking about this, trying to get in touch with Mohak and help him out to some extent, and seemingly aBeZy at least knows something that it's not the end of the world, it's something that can be sorted, and hopefully we have positive updates to share on that over the coming days. Let's talk about some of the matches though. Of course, for FaZe, that was their last online game of the entire year, as Drazah says, land for the rest of the year at Major 4, at the World Championship, and then of course the Esports World Cup. And I'm not gonna lie, this result for OpTic puts them in a really interesting spot, assuming that the organisation accepts the invite to go and attend and play at the Esports World Cup. They might need to make a roster change after the World Championship in July, and if they were to, what does that mean for the Esports World Cup? Because of course, you're also trying to make a roster change when you do for Black Ops 6, but Esports World Cup's going to be played still on Modern Warfare 3. So, yeah, going to be fascinating. But in the end, OpTic take a 3-2 defeat to Boston. We talked about it in depth, of course, last night. The big talk is, what do OpTic do from here? And exactly why they've had this clear aggression. It's not just their search and destroy, at least as far as I'm concerned. People just talking about, oh, their search is worse. Yes, it is. And, that is true. Their respawn record this stage isn't terrible, but there are clearly games where they should be winning, and top teams would win. The game 4 against Boston yesterday, against Minnesota Rocker as well earlier in the stage. There's a few respawns that there's just no way they should be losing, and it's also not like they had a difficult stage. I mean, they literally have played Miami with a substitute, Vegas, Minnesota Rocker, Ravens, you know, Boston. The only tough games thrown in there really, the Subliners, and then of course they play Toronto today, as we'll get into over the coming minutes. And this is wild, right? Basically a decade ago was the last time that OpTic lost 5 consecutive games. So they're basically on the worst run in their history as an organization, and they will start in the losers bracket for the first time since Vanguard's Major 4 back in 2022. So where do they go from here, especially when, of course, if you guys didn't see the video yesterday, or just, you know, what we were talking about yesterday when we had this moment and, you know, his Pred jumping up and basically doing nothing. And of course, Pred had to think about and talk about his playstyle here. Pred is clearly an incredibly talented player, but he does have this tendency that is talked about quite a lot to play, I mean, look at number 7 on the minimap, to play very slowly, to not work with his team as much as he might like to. Like, here's Shotzzy, his SMG duo, running around, and then, you know, where is this guy? Then eventually he dies. Now, his damage numbers this series were bad. This stage, they're maybe not absolutely terrible, but it's quite clear that this is a problem for OpTic Texas, the way that Pred plays at times, and I think we saw it earlier in the season when OpTic were kind of struggling. That was the big point, like, how is it working between Pred and Shotzzy when it really worked during Major 3, certainly at the Major 3 itself on the Championship Sunday, they were playing it full of utmost confidence, and Pred is absolutely a confidence player. It feels to me that if he's not playing confidence, he reverts to that kind of play style, the kind of, you know, le prone, lazy, whatever they say, right, the jokes about him laying down at the time, and Karma criticised him for that, right? Earlier in the season, Karma literally on stream said, this playstyle from Pred is not going to work. I think this was probably during the Major 2 qualifiers or shortly after Major 2, whatever, something along those lines. Then OpTic turned it around. Pred started playing better, more aggressively, working better with Shotzzy. They then won the upcoming Major, and as Pred says yesterday, unacceptable performance of me today. Haven't played like myself. Very disappointing. GG's Boston. So, you know, this is an interesting piece because, yes, he hasn't played like himself in Major 3, but in some sense, maybe he's reverted to a play style that he's, you know, uses when he's not full of confidence. I don't know. It's difficult to speculate exactly why OpTic have fallen off this badly, but clearly they have, and it's not just a matter of, oh, their search is bad, oh, they're going to go to LAN and they're going to be fine. Like, clearly there are serious problems here under the surface. And this is what Kenny implies, and I'll share a couple of clips here in a second from Shotzzy and also from, well, actually Hex, not so happy about kind of, you know, this situation, because Hex doesn't want the feeling of any excuses or anything like that coming up publicly. I don't really see this as an excuse to me. It's just Kenny kind of saying his piece and what he feels like is going on. Now, Kenny doesn't like online COD at the best of times, and obviously there's lots of online COD this year, and there will be between, you know, obviously them winning the Major and going to try and go back-to-back a Major 4 in Burbank coming up in just a week or so's time. But I still think this is Kenny kind of revealing, at least from his perspective, what is going wrong, and at least wanting to say something on the situation, because cannot stick to anything we talked about. GG's Boston, right? Obviously, the fact that they lost to Boston in the first place is just so bad, but clearly they've had conversations. Now, this is expected. When they lost to Vegas, their perspective was, okay, online, it is what it is, server cheese, whatever. Now, in hindsight, obviously, you look at it probably slightly differently, but it was the Rocker loss that was the bad one, really, because Rocker are not good. Like, let's be real. I mean, they got slapped around by Vegas yesterday. Rocker are terrible, and OpTic lost to them. That was the loss that was like, wow, are we serious? And after that, they probably needed to have a really good week of practice. They then go to the next weekends, they lose to Ravens, they lose to New York, right? So, you know, after that defeat, they obviously would have had some sort of conversations, and then after the next weekend, losing to Ravens and co, they must have had some conversations on why they're playing poorly, how they need to turn it around, and as I said earlier, or maybe I didn't, but anyway, Ben said it on the flank last night, that their scrims have not been as good against the top teams as they were previously. Like, they're clearly not the same team they were literally a month ago, which is kind of wild to think about. And, you know, once a negative spiral starts happening, it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. So that's Kenny's point. They've been talking about what they're doing wrong. They've been talking about trying to solve these problems, and they simply cannot execute it. Now, is he talking about the team in general, or is he talking about one player specifically, right? This is kind of the question on the matter, just because we saw that clip from the process or whatever it was earlier in the season when Kenny and Pred were having a bit of a back and forth behind the scenes, but, you know, backstage. And Pred said, oh, you know, we blacked out, we made a mistake. And Kenny was like, no, you blacked out, you made the mistake. And, you know, and obviously that's on some level good teamwork, right? They got over that moment and obviously they pushed on and onto better things. But is Kenny talking about the entire team? Because Shotzzy, as far as I'm concerned, is still doing everything that he needs to do. Kenny actually is, by the numbers, their highest KD search and destroy player this stage, which is, and Kenny's not really known for a good search and destroy, so that is a bad sign. And it's not like Kenny's playing great, like he's made his own mistakes. But I do wonder if Kenny's just, you know, not exactly saying that about the entire team. He's saying that about one or two individuals. So Shotzzy turns the stream on actually, and I'll just share what he had to say on this, because I think Shotzzy's just such a mature guy. Given the circumstances, he's not going to be on stream chatting loads of BS. He's sitting there being like, look guys, you want to talk trash? Like, you know, go for it. We deserve it type thing. You know, put your thoughts in the chat, get annoyed, get your frustrations out, and we're just going to try and move on from there.
Well, let the chat be AIDS, brother. Let them unleash their opinions. You know me. I don't really care. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I can't even blame y'all. Then y'all can say literally whatever, call us whatever, say whatever. Fucking trust me, this shit is.
Kenny tweet? What'd he say?
He said, can't stick to anything we talk about. GG's Boston.
Who said that?
Ken.
Is there for Geo. He picks it up. Standy gets shut down. Another first blood to Legion.
That's not ideal.
Bomb planted.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Geo
honestly,
heard that or what. But
yeah, that tweet kind of scares me a little bit.
I thought Standy was insane for pushing that after this.
I just hope the boys aren't getting too down on themselves.
Just to quickly look at the numbers, really, so far this stage. I mean, this is so incredible to think about that OpTic have lost 5 series on the bounce. In terms of Slayer rating, in terms of, you know, respawn KD, Pred's been holding his own, technically. But that doesn't really tell the entire story of, you know, the damage dealing and the playstyle and the fact that Shotzzy has a significantly higher Slayer rating than Pred does, given that if you look at, you know, a player like HyDra, that, of course, is not the case on the New York Subliners. And in Search and Destroy, it's been very evident that Pred has been their worst player. He has a .72 this stage in Search. And, you know, they've lost their last, 9 Search and Destroys in a row. And as I say, yeah, Kenny has a .96, which is better than Dashy, better than Shotzzy. Very marginal, but it's like there are clearly things missing from their team at the moment. So very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below, as always, what you think the true meaning is behind the statement there from Kenny, and obviously Shotzzy and Hex's perspective as well. This is the current table of standings. OpTic are dead last, 1 in 5. If they lose today, it's, well, definitely possible they will remain dead last, because even if Boston end up 1 in 6, they win the head-to-head tiebreaker despite a far inferior map count record. Boston had won 2 maps going into that OpTic series. They won 3 against OpTic in that very series. But given the current situation, this is how the bracket is probably going to play out. Of course, we'll talk about it tomorrow, how it's fully going to be looking. But Ultra and FaZe are going to be either number 1 or number 2 seed. Miami are locked into the 5th seed. Vegas are locked into the 6th seed. So their opponents we shall see. There's then the question really as to what's going to happen with Boston and OpTic, but they're guaranteed losers alongside the Minnesota Rocker. The teams that are on the bubble, Ravens and Los Angeles Guerrillas. We'll talk about that over the coming minutes. So depending what happens here, if a Subliners win and if a Ravens win, then the bracket is going to look like this, depending a little bit on some of the seeding and some of the tiebreakers. And then, well, this is the possibility of Los Angeles Thieves win today. So, look, we'll talk tomorrow exactly how it's playing out. This, though, is the bracket for today. So OpTic play another game against Toronto. I genuinely think they will play some better COD today. I think they are a team that can play up to their opposition to some extent, but I still expect Toronto to win. Like, realistically, having watched OpTic over the last couple of weeks, do I think that overnight they're going to make some serious changes? But, you know, the guys on the flank were correct last night when they said these are incredibly crucial few days for OpTic Texas, not just for their World Championship aspirations, but genuinely for, you know, who's on the team next season, what changes might they consider, because if they lose to Toronto today, if they have a bad day of practice on, you know, Monday, and they have a bad day of practice before the event on Wednesday, and even on Thursday in the warm-up scrims, like, it ain't looking good. good because there just isn't the time to turn it around. They need some momentum. Even a game 5, I mean, to be fair, if they lose another game 5, they're going to be fuming, to be honest. But, you know, just show some signs of life, especially in Search and Destroy against Toronto today. And if they can't, it's really tough to look at them as a serious threat from now to the end of the season. Boston then play Ravens. Like, I don't think Boston played great COD yesterday, to be honest. I think OpTic were just pretty terrible. Boston may win this one and may go back-to-back, but I think the Ravens should be the better team, and I'm going to pick Carolina to win. They also massively need those 10 points, obviously. New York Subliners versus Thieves is another one where Thieves could really do with the 10 points. But I think as it stands, I have a little more faith in the Subliners, maybe to close up this one in 5. But I think we're going to have some competitive series today. Very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.